Hi, this is the Orwellian Eye, because we're going to be talking about genocide.
We're going to be ranking the worst atrocities, genocides, and dictators. Which
I'm excited.
I'm saying from the get go, this is a really bad idea, and it's your idea, Tom. I'm putting it solely on your shoulders.
But I have the text to prove it's not.
Tom's got a YouTube channel called Don't Tell Tiffany, where he does sort of like dramatic vlogs.
Worst plug I've ever heard. We do like adventure travel.
It's amazing. It's like the best YouTube channel that there is, and you should definitely go and check it out. I'll put a link up there.
We have a new video coming about Komodo dragons.
Do you meet any Komodo dragons?
Oh yeah, we meet them, manta rays, huge flying bats.
Tom has been living in China for the last 2 years, up until a week ago, where he's moved to Hong Kong. He's now 1 week into a 2-week quarantine.
Yeah, so these 4 walls are prisons there. We're not allowed to leave this for 2 weeks. Halfway through now, though. Great time to sit back, have a beer. You get this wristband, which kind of tracks where you were.
Have you left the hotel room at all in the last week?
Well, no, you're not allowed to leave. So I'm not allowed to go past my door if I want water, food. There's actually a little stool outside the door that they come and put it on, and then they knock and then they run away. So we're not allowed to leave this room. We haven't seen anybody. We have a very nice lady who calls us once every 2 days, who I think makes sure we haven't committed suicide or done a Jeffrey Epstein or anything like that.
This video's getting done inside. Shall we crack into this tier video then? How do we rank this?
Like the most brutal, the most killed, the most horrific is probably top tier, right?
Right. So we're saying S is the worst. So S for sickening, super bad or sickening. Sickeningly super bad. A for atrocious.
A lot of atrocities.
A lot of atrocities. B for bloody awful. C for catastrophic.
Or a bit crap.
And D for devastating. Is that what we're going for?
Okay.
Cool. Oh, it's not cool. Right. This is such a bad idea.
Cool.
This is such a bad idea. But let's start. What are we starting with, Tom?
It's not our best idea. It's not our worst idea. Well, I think we'll start with everyone's favourite, the Holocaust. It seems to be it's by far the most popular, I should say popular, but well-known genocide.
11 million people. A lot of Romani gypsies. Of the 11 million, 6 million people were Bavarian Jews. It was just out and out racism, like the definitive.
Yeah. And not just racism either. Like ableism was a big part of it. Homophobia. But I think what's really stands out about this is that it was the first, in typical German fashion, the first industrialized genocide. So for me, it's a B.
All right. Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge, the killing fields. Pol Pot, educated in France, a socialist. He went on to kill a quarter of his population, so 2 million out of 8 million between 1975 and 1979.
A personal one for us, because we've obviously both been to Cambodia and been to the killing fields and S21 school.
They rounded up all the bourgeoisie, so the doctors, the lawyers, the accountants, anyone who was considered a professional.
If you had soft hands, or if you wore glasses, so I'd have definitely been out. When you go to the killing fields, everyone always says the most brutal thing is the killing tree, where they used to whack the babies' heads against to kill them. But the most brutal thing, really, there's another tree, which just has a little sign over it. It's very innocuous. And if you listen to the audiobook, it tells you that they worked out, because they didn't want to waste bullets, right? These people's lives beneath the cost of a bullet to them. And they worked out the palm tree, the edge is serrated enough and tough enough that you can actually slit through someone's throat with it. So they used to kneel them all down in the parade ground and just go through slitting the throats with a palm tree. I've got a video on this where we go around these sites and actually get talking to some Cambodian ex-army guys and go out drinking with them.
It's really good. You should go watch it. Very good video. Where are we putting it?
For me, this is either top tier or second top tier.
Let's go A then.
Let's go to Darfur.
Darfur. Here we are. Darfur. So child soldiers. So Omar al-Bashir, who you may or may not have heard of. Basically ethnic cleansing in the Sudan.
21st century's first genocide. Over 1 million children alone have been killed or raped or displaced or traumatized in some ways. And it's been going on for what, 17 years? I'd put it at least with the Holocaust. Well, let's stay in Africa and go through to Rwanda. My favourite thing about Rwandan, well, if you can have a favourite thing about genocide, is I love the name Tutsi, which is one of the ethnic groups which were slaughtered during this.
When did this happen? In 1994, was it?
1994, yeah.
A million people dead.
And I think, like Darfur, Rwanda is another name on people's lips, but they may not know a lot about. But this has been a subject of films. You got Hotel Rwanda, and there was a really good Netflix film which follows an Irish UN peacekeeping group during the Rwandan genocide. And the most prominent thing about this is 1 million people over 100 days, which is about 70% of the total Tutsi population. Is it as bad as what's going on in Darfur?
That's 100 days compared to 17 years.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well. So maybe the level beneath.
See, catastrophic.
Let's go to another country that we've both been to, Vietnam. Let's go to the My Lai massacre.
Right.
It's one I definitely wanted on the list.
This happened in 1968, didn't it? 504 people dead, and it was perpetrated by some American officer, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's the horrific thing about this, is that it's not the amount of people who died, but it's how they died and why they died. And yeah, it was a lieutenant called William Kelly Jr. And basically, I think what happened was this lieutenant, cracked. Or there were reports that he was a bit of a psychopath anyway. Before that, I think he'd been cited for a couple of things, and he just took it out on these villages. And him and his company just started razing these villages, killing women, children, men, infants, gang raping, mutilating bodies. And the shocking thing is, or maybe it shouldn't be shocking to us, but it's American. So and then the only reason it stopped is, to give the Americans a due, the helicopter pilot who dropped them off, he had to land his helicopter between the lieutenant and the surviving members of the village, and basically point his guns at them, and there was a bit of a Mexican standoff until the lieutenant withdrew. He was given a life sentence. Do you know how much time he served?
Yeah.
Well, no, 3.5 years. And do you know where he served it?
No.
At his house. He was under house arrest, 3.5 years. Whereas the pilot, I think, was pretty much struck from the military and couldn't find a job, couldn't go on with his career for basically doing the right thing.
I'd say this is a D, because I think the rest are all like state-led genocides, and I think this just sounds like some bloodthirsty guy just, using a war as an excuse to murder people.
Yeah, okay, I'm happy with that.
So, Imperial Japan.
Oh, I've been waiting for this one.
So,
Favourite.
Nanjing Massacre, I think, is the main part of this, in which 14 million people died. A lot like the Second World War, so 1937 to 1945. So
I would recommend to anybody who has an idea of history and who likes history to start reading about the Asian theatre in World War II. Because I remember when I first came to China, and the CCP, the communists, had just said, okay, we're going to decide that World War II started in 1933. And I scoffed at the idea. And the more I read about it, the more I agreed. And the Second World War didn't start in 37, 39?
39.
It started in 33 with the Manchurian incident. And Imperial Japan, the amount of atrocities they committed. So we lived in Shanghai, and we went up to the Nanjing Memorial, where basically they just raped and murdered a city to the extent where 2 officers were having a competition to see who could get to 100 people beheaded first.
That's awful.
Yeah. And there's a lot of anger still between the Chinese and Japanese. You go to the Nanjing Massacre Museum, and the sign says the Nanjing Massacre Museum perpetrated by the Imperial Japanese invaders. And my girlfriend was getting really angry walking around, and I thought it was because she was getting angry at what was happening. But she could hear the Chinese mothers telling their children, saying, look at these Japanese devils, look at what they're doing. So there's still a lot of friction between those two nations. I mean, this is the Imperial Japanese top for me. Like, I love Japan, I love the Japanese. But the very top, S. The Kurds. Let's go for the Kurds.
So that's Saddam Hussein. So this is...
Yeah.
I don't know, culturally, the interesting thing about this for me is that he flooded and destroyed the Gardens of Eden. It was in 1988, 182,000 Kurds were gassed by Saddam Hussein.
But because of the chemical attacks, there was a lot of prolonged health problems in this.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So high rates of cancer still that the survivors are dealing with. So that's got to be pretty shit when you survived an attack, survived a genocide, and it basically takes the last quarter of your life off.
Yeah, I'm going to put this one at a C, I think.
Okay.
Shall we do the Mongolians next?
Yes, my favourite period of history. Now, I'll warn you, I'm a big Genghis Khan revisionist. I'm a big fanboy of his.
As in, you think he was good or you think he was bad?
Yes, he was the first empire to do a meritocracy. So one of his most famous generals, Jebe, who basically did not, he's probably the best general that the world's ever seen, was somebody who he defeated, or he was a soldier that he had captured, and then he saw the merit in him and promoted him. He was a big believer in religious tolerance. So basically, if you were captured by Genghis, he would offer you to join his army and then pretty much leave you alone as long as you fought well.
How many people did he kill in total?
Well, in proportion, I mean, remember this was like 1206 to mid 1300s. He killed 5% of the world's population.
5%. So where are we putting it?
I mean, yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about this is that the same thing defeated Imperial Japan as it did the Mongols. And you look at the Mongols, and that's China. And it's not the Chinese; it's the size of China. And the Mongols eventually became Chinese.
Do you have to say that because you're in China? Is that the rule?
I won't be for much longer with stuff like that. I would put this one above the bottom, I would say.
Shall we do Dunblane next?
Very different to the rest of the massacres, but very important, I think, in today's climate.
It's a very British-specific thing. I don't think people outside of Britain will know about it.
No. But people outside of Britain might know Andy Murray, the tennis player, and I think he was at the school when this happened.
He was there, yeah. It affected us. I don't know if you remember, but Dad used to have a gun, and he got rid of it after Dunblane.
I do remember that, yeah. So I think it's got to be bottom tier, because it's nowhere as brutal as any of the other ones, although it's horrendous that 16 children died. Well, let's go for the Cultural Revolution.
Highlights of Chairman Mao. So, I'm starting this straight away with the preface. This is S tier. He is the most evil man who has ever lived. He's responsible for the deaths of 80 million people. So 5 million between 1950 to 1952, which is when he came into power, by the way. How he started there is he rounded up at least one person from every village and executed them to set an example. The Great Leap Forward in 1962 was his biggest murderous campaign. Ended in 1962, by the way, and that had 52 million people dead. 52 million people. And the Cultural Revolution, which was in the 1960s, so after the Great Leap Forward, that ended up in 3 million people dead. But it's just the absolutely, a lot of work camps, a lot of starvation, a lot of people working to death. Utterly awful.
We're going to have to disagree here because, as someone living in Hong Kong and previously living in Shanghai, Chairman Mao is an absolute hero, only eclipsed by President Xi, the current president, who has a great way forward for China and the world, if only the world would listen to him.
Yeah, I understand, Tom. I understand why you have to say that.
Anyway, we'll go on to the next one, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. The Brigadier General in charge, Brigadier General Dyer, was convinced that there was going to be a major insurrection, so he banned all meetings. But this, as you can imagine, trying to get that information out to all the villages is quite difficult. So they didn't get the message. So they gathered for a festival, and then basically the British Army just herded them into a garden and opened fire without any warning on them, killing 379 and injuring over 1,000. I think the numbers killed keeps it quite low on our list.
Right.
Maybe second bottom tier. Where do we put My Lai? Is that bottom tier? Is that
bottom? Yeah, My Lai and Dunblane's bottom.
Yeah, maybe that one or the one above. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll keep that at D. Definitely D. Okay. So the last one, the big hitter, the dictator of destruction, the Red Terror, Mr. Stalin, Comrade Stalin, to address him by his proper name. For me, S tier, no question. So let's have a look at his 30 years of terror, or however. I think I get his numbers to about, it's in the tens of millions. Some people would conservatively estimate him killing 20 million, and some people would say he killed 50 million. Started off when Lenin was in charge, after the First World War, or while the First World War was still ongoing actually, with the Red Terror, that's 1917 to 1922, that's 1 million people dead. So the murdering of the Bolsheviks, it's just killing people. Then on to Kazakhstan, where he killed 9 million Kazakhs in 1932, and this was when he was in charge. Then Holodomor, which was the Ukrainian genocide, 1932 to 1933, 7 million dead. So what he was doing, it was the kulak. So he, some of the farmers had more wealth than other farmers. So the angry people would round up all the rich farmers, and they sent them off to Siberia to basically die and starve to death. But what that then meant is that the productive farmers stopped creating all the food, so loads of people starved to death. But it was just like envious socialism. Like, you are a more successful farmer than me. I sit in a bar all day drinking vodka. I'm going to round you all up, and we're going to send you off. A lot of the villagers tried to defend them, but yeah, they just send them off, and that's the kulaks. And then great purge between 1934 and 1939. It's 1 million dead. Operation Barbarossa in the Second World War, where they were just destroying political opponents. 3 million dead. And then the NKVD, which is post Second World War, and maybe including some of the Second World War. That's where they were responsible for 27 million dead, and that's rounding people up, sending them to gulags. Just killing anyone who disagreed politically, just wiping out people, and as I say, any farmers who were doing well, they were sent off to die as well. It was utter like communism in action. It was absolutely awful. So yeah, S tier for me.
Yeah, and I've read there's a couple of books about people's experiences in the gulags, or fiction about the gulags, and then the stories you hear about Stalin are quite interesting. About like how he was a huge drinker. And he had these parties where his subordinates would come, not knowing if they would ever be able to leave or whatever. So, I'm certainly ignorant about it. I think you made a good case.
Thanks for watching the video. Make sure that you like it as well, and share it if you found it interesting. And also, put in the comments any suggestions that you want to see. If you want to see any more tier videos, or if you want to do a tier video with me, put that down in the comments and we'll make it happen.